All righty. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Village Council regular meeting of September 9th, 2025. We will begin as we usually do. We will have an invocation from retired pastor Hugh Tudor Foley. And then we will take up the Pledge of Allegiance. Please, Reverend.
Thank you. Let us pray. Almighty God, we ask that you bless this council and our mayor as they represent the people and our community of Pinehurst. We thank you for their time and service. And we ask that you grant that they may have a spirit of wisdom, charity, and justice as they consider the needs and concerns of our village. In your holy name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'll remind my fellow council members and those who will be coming forward to speak to please speak into the microphone as clearly as you can so we can help the staff in the back that's watching over us so they can hear what we're saying. We'll begin with reports, and I'll turn to the village manager to kick it off.
Thank you, Mayor. This Friday, we have our Live After 5 at 5:15 in the Arboretum. Whiskey Pines opens at 5:50, and then the Bourbon Sons take the stage at 6 o'clock, so it'll be an exciting evening. We also have our public input meeting on the Pinehurst Development Ordinance update, so that is Wednesday, September 17th from 4 to 6 p.m. That'll be here in this room. And then we have our Eats, Beats, and Brews towards the end of the month, September 20th, and that's 5 to 9 at the Arboretum. So those few activities we have upcoming. And if there's any questions, let me know.
Okay, thank you. The last time we gathered was almost a month ago. It was August 12th. So there's a lot that's gone on. And bear with me so I can report on much of what I did and was involved in. On August 20th, I attended as a member of the SMPO, the meeting that was held here, and we discussed some transportation projects and topics related to that. And one thing that was mentioned is that October 28th is a public hearing on the traffic circle being conducted by NCDOT at the Fair Barn. So there'll be more details about exact time and all that, but I want people to be aware. On the 21st, I had a meeting with Courtney Stiles, who runs First Tee of the Sandhills. And it's a real group. They've acquired some land. They're building a 9-hole golf course. And they introduced golf to some folks who may be less fortunate than others or not able to be members of clubs and all. And it's a very worthwhile cause, and I just bring it to your attention. And if you get the chance to meet Courtney, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. On August 21st, also that day, I attended along with Jack Farrell, who's on the board of directors of the Fort Bragg Regional Land Use Committee. And Jack will provide more info, but there was it must have been close to 75 people there. And it was I found it very informative because it was my first time there. But Jack will have probably some more info. On August 26th, we had in Tufts Park there the unveiling of the Warren Manning plaque. And it was a very nice ceremony. We had the folks from our library, represented by Audrey. We had fellow council members there, people from the beautification committee, and Warren Manning has quite a background. He was really the worker bee behind the Frederick Olmsted name, and he had a huge impact on this village. And that's the second, I think, historical plaque that we've put up in the last couple of years. We had the solar eclipse one on Ritter Road, but this one is right there at the park. And so people will see it often, and there may be some additional plaques coming down the road. And the pilot was there, and there was coverage in the paper, so it was a good event. Excuse me. On the 3rd, I attended the grand opening of the More Innovative High School at Sand Hills Community College. This has been in the paper. They received about $25 million, and they are putting this high school there for about 400 students eventually. This is their first class. They had 70 kids enrolled now. And the idea is to provide some really technical training for those kids that want to go probably maybe right to work when they're through at their high school years, or go into Sand Hills Community College for a trade or profession. So I put that to your attention because I think it's going to be play a prominent role here in our local economy. And I can report on the 5th, I took a lot of glass from our home to be recycled, and I want to just observe that Pinehurst residents prefer white wine over red by a very wide margin based on my observation of the recycling bins. So good, everybody having a good time. Earlier, I guess it was just yesterday, myself, Councilman Taylor, and Village Manager Willardson, we attended another meeting with the North Carolina Department of Transportation regarding the circle. They are still working on some details, and we left them with several questions seeking answers for, and they reiterated about the public meeting, and so we will continue to have a conversation with them as we figure out what's going to evolve here. And so for those of you who are following this as our residents, you can go to our website, click on Hot Topics, and go to the traffic circle if you want to catch up, refresh your memory, and you can mark October 28th on your calendar. Lastly, last night I had the privilege to attend the Pinehurst No. 6 Homeowners Association, or Property Owners Association, I think they may call themselves. And I left with two clear messages. They love their sidewalks. For those of us that may have remembered some of that debate, they love their sidewalks. And runner-up was Mike Apke. I don't see him here now, but Mike, they were shouting your name from the rooftops. So anyway, that's all I have. John Taylor. Oh, excuse me, Jeff Morgan. Sorry, too much.
Thank you. Not much to offer today, but I did attend the CPRC meeting, the Central Pines Regional Council meeting, on August 27th, representing Pinehurst, and just some of the highlights for that. Did have a program that's out of Ohio where they're using AI for waste management, which was very interesting. The fact they would end up having cameras that look into the garbage bins and recycling bins and being able to identify it's the right stuff or not the right stuff. And their point was to be able to give feedback to different residents about the efficiencies of what they're doing for the recycling versus non. I don't think the return on investment is there yet, but there is some research going on. So just for you, Mr. Mayor, the juice is not worth the squeeze. So we'll hold off on that one. Other things they had identified was that there's certainly been some tightening on federal grants from various perspectives, but a lot of that's associated with EO. And they did identify different opportunities for low-cost housing, addressing that, asking questions for that. And then the last thing on there that I think applies for us is that they did see that there are many areas in the U.S. that are not ready for aging populations. They identified not having access to various facilities, grocery stores, and things like that. Not much of this applies to us here in Pinehurst because we're very fortunate on really having access to all that, but there was a significant portion that they're addressing with them. So that's all I have at this point in time for announcements. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Morgan. Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, I guess, first thing is I did attend as I tend to do, the SMPO Technical Coordinating Committee meeting last Wednesday, and they are, I think, finishing, Doug, their recommendations that will go to the board for new projects to be included in the upcoming State Transportation Improvement Program. So this is not the traffic circle and other things that have already been decided on, but some new things, including several that bear on Pinehurst. Some where we're looking for funding in some of the Greenway and carbon sequestration programs and some other things. So that is coming down the road. I would mention to our fine village clerk, just to be sure that all notices go out properly. October 28th, which is going to be the public meeting on the traffic circle, they're tentatively planning to do it from 3 to 7. It also happens to be our normal second meeting of the village council, and Pat and Doug and I suggested that we would probably be willing to move that in lieu of wanting to rearrange this public hearing, which I think is going to be very important. And the only thing that I would add to Pat's earlier comments is that while they are stamping this as the final design, that is what they tend to put on any design that they put forward. And I think that as occurred a year ago, and I say this to all of the public who are here in person, as well as to whoever's going to hear my voice subsequently, public input is something that they will take very seriously. This current design, in my opinion, is a substantial improvement over the year ago, the so-called CFI. We still have questions, as Pat suggested, and it is not final in the way that I use the word or define the word final in my dictionary. I think that's it.
Thank you. Barbara Ficklin.
Thank you. I, too, as Pat mentioned, attended the unveiling of the Manning Historical Marker on the 26th of August. Long-time project for the Beautification Committee, and I think they were thrilled with the results. So please, if you haven't, go by and take a look at it. It is beautiful. Yesterday, the Beautification Committee met for its monthly meeting. It reviewed activities scheduled through the end of the year, which includes fall planting, preparing and hanging Christmas wreaths and swags, and all of that culminating on December 5th with the tree lighting. They also discussed numerous ongoing and potential beautification projects throughout the village. I also attended the 6th focus group meeting for the PDO update on Wednesday, September 3rd. That was supposed to be our last meeting. However, we still have additional chapters to cover, so we have scheduled meeting number 7, which would be on the 17th of September in the morning, which is the same day as the community meeting. And finally, Pinehurst Business Partners will be meeting on Monday, September 22nd at Wee Pines between 5:30 and 7:30. That's it, thank you.
What's the date on the Christmas tree unveiling?
December 5.
December. Thank you.
And Pinehurst Partners is the 22nd.
Correct.
Okay. Councilman Farrell.
Thank you, Mayor. The meeting of the Fort Bragg Regional Land Use Advisory Commission was very successful, I believe. We had representatives from the 7 counties that we represent, a number of county commissioners, the mayors of Rayford and Spring Lake and Southern Pines, Aberdeen, as well as Pinehurst, and some members of the state legislature. So it was interesting that we were able to convey to everyone the importance of the Land Use Commission and our concerns also about potential land use legislation that could affect the mission at Fort Bragg. So I think it was a very successful meeting, and thank you for attending. I also attended the unveiling of the Manning plaque. Having talked to a member of the Beautification Committee from time to time, I thought it went very, very well. Also attended the focus groups as we start to move towards more form and content of the PDO update, and I think that although the schedule is quite ambitious, I think we're making some progress, so I'm looking forward to that and to the community input next Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. All right,
Pat, I had two other things.
Go ahead.
That I forgot. One, Doug and I had a meeting, I guess last week, with a couple of individuals. They had a very specific issue, but they made a comment in sort of the preamble to the issue they were there to discuss that I thought was interesting. They said is that they retired, their final retirement was from a position at Duke University and they lived up in Durham, and they were looking for the next place to go. And they'd been in the mountains, and they'd been in the coast, and they'd been a lot of different places. But they said they ended up settling on Pinehurst because as they came to and they'd been to events at Pinehurst, conferences and what have you. Neither one is particularly a golfer. But they said that what struck them in walking around Pinehurst, and this is 10 to 12 years ago, I believe, was everyone they met who was a resident said how happy they were. That was a great thing to hear. And I'm not suggesting that the same thing is not true today. I think we all, given our positions, probably tend to be the recipient of the squeaky wheel. And we tend to hear the things that are wrong or the things that people have a complaint about and what have you. But I was struck by this comment, the way they made it, and it probably behooves all of us to kind of keep an eye out for whether there is any sort of underlying theme there, not just an individual with a particular problem, but something that we may need to think about. And this was not the subject of the meeting, but it did strike me. Second thing, and Jeff, I'll mention this to you, I received a survey from the Central Pines organization, which I started to fill out, and then the questions were at a level of depth that I couldn't really answer. 10 things, which should we do more of or less of? As we think about the countywide land use plan, which is a subset of the CPRC, do you, and you have to do it tonight, but are there things that you think we need to be more aware of at the regional level? Because there are a lot of balls in the air. There's DOT, there's land use planning, and legislation in Raleigh. Are there things that we need to find a way to be more engaged on a regional basis than we are? I don't know the answer to that. The answer may be no, and you certainly don't have to respond now. But as I tried to go through this survey, I thought it was a good survey, but I couldn't answer it. Maybe you probably could have. I could not.
I can answer the question on there. And first of all, we have to think about what does CPRC do. And the first thing it does is it's a pass-through for a lot of grants that come from the federal side. And of course, that's been challenged here, and there's a lot more oversight, as just mentioned. So there's concern about being able to continue to fund things they've funded in the past. Things that we have on there is a lot associated with aging and activities associated with that. Other than that, we don't get a whole lot from there. Other things that the CPRC does is that they have a core group of talent in various things in their organization to assist municipalities. And let's just assume that they don't have the planning and a planning department like we have. They don't have an Alex Cameron, okay? So they have people with expertise of that with a lot smaller organizations, and they say, hey, reach up to us and we can help out with that. So we're one of the big players, not one of the small players. And so they can assist with that. Now, I don't want to make it sound like that, we're just getting money and not getting anything from there, because there are certain things that they're doing that we may not have. There's also the relationships that we can have in talking with them. And so there's various things that we have done, and one of them actually, in particular, we're going to get a presentation from Dana, but there was things they were talking about on accounting and grants, things like that we may be able to work in. So I would send stuff to her saying, hey, reach out to CPRC on there, of course, including Doug with that. But those are how they can assist with us. And a lot of it is just communication and collegiality to share ideas, best practices, and things like that with them.
Great, thank you very much.
All set? Okay, let's go on to item 4. That is the motion to approve the consent agenda. All the items listed here are considered routine or have been discussed at length in previous meetings and will be enacted by one motion. No separate discussion will be held unless requested by a member of the Village Council. We'll be approving Village Council meeting minutes from August 12th, both for the regular meeting and also for the work session meeting. So I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve all the items listed and considered routine on the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have moved on to that. We're at the end of the consent agenda, and we are now at public comments. I'll ask the clerk, is there any? No. No one has signed up for a public comment. Is there anyone who would like to make a public comment but just hadn't signed up yet? Seeing none, we will move on to item 6, which is regular business. Item A is the quarterly standard operating plan implementation update for the fiscal year that just ended June 30th. Doug, you want to set it up?
Yeah, Shannon, do you mind pulling up the PowerPoint on that? It is the FY25 IAP year-end review. All right, my mouse is not working tonight, so Shannon's going to have to do it for me. Thank you, Shannon. So we have, typically at the end of the fiscal year, we have a review of everything that we did concerning our initiative action plans, and then also our performance metrics that we measure throughout the year. So I'm going to first cover the IAPs, and then we'll discuss the performance metrics in a little detail as well. Hopefully none of this is a big surprise to you, that hopefully I've been keeping you up to date and you're like, oh, we did that? Oh, I had no idea. But here we go. Down here at the bottom, these are our initiative action plans that we had for the year. Midway through the year, we also added short-term rental monitoring and compliance as an IAP as well. So here they are, and I'll kind of dive through them one by one. First is the update of the Pinehurst Development Ordinance. We'll talk about it more later, and it's kind of reaching a climax right now. But we've had 6 focus group meetings, and the consultant is working through providing us draft chapters for this. We're making good progress, and we hope this month to be able to provide a comprehensive draft to both the council, to the public, to get feedback on. We're excited that this project's moving forward, and we hope to be able to approve it. We have some public hearings planned for the month of October, and hopefully shortly after that we can get it adopted. Redevelopment of Village Place is something that we have talked about on and off and had different approaches to this, but I think we are making good progress. We are currently asking for statements of interest from developers and property owners, people that might be interested in being a part of our vision for this area. So we're requesting that feedback, and from there we'll take the next steps. I think we are much closer to making this on the screen a reality than we have ever in the past. I think
Saw the legal ad in the paper. That was well done. Yeah.
Right. I also think that our working with the county for the land swap will make a big difference and allow us to open up and make this happen. Tonight we will also be taking action on this. The design is complete. We've bidded the project, and hopefully we have a contract after tonight for the construction of the library. And then shortly after that, we'll start moving on the archives as well. So this has also made a lot of progress in the past year. Discussion about a third fire facility. We had our Birdie process. From that, we had a discussion about hiring more firefighters, and we went through the SAFER grant. We submitted an application for that in fiscal year 25, and we hope to hear positive news from that later this fiscal year. And then we also put a timeline where we could plan and design the third fire facility out on Linden Road. A multimodal transportation plan was approved by the council in July, and from that we took several of those projects and requested that they be prioritized on the state transportation improvement plan. So as John mentioned earlier, that is going to the governing board later. TCC did approve several of our projects to be scored for prioritization, and hopefully we get a couple of those funded through the state transportation plan. One thing that is great is we had a team effort complete this, and we did all in-house when we had budgeted $100,000 for an outside consultant to do it. So always nice to save some money. Rassy Wicker had the synthetic turf installed, and we had our ribbon cutting ceremony back in, I think, March. And it's been a great asset to the community. It saves money from us having to water, fertilize, et cetera. But more importantly, I think it allows us to use the facility much more on a more frequent basis. You don't have to give the grass time to rest, and we don't have big money spots in front of the goalkeepers area. And so that's been a good asset as well. And then short-term rental monitoring and compliance. We've made good progress on this as well. We got this software in place. We've been monitoring it. We have written enforcement orders, and we've had compliance with those enforcement orders. We just need to keep monitoring and making sure that that everyone stays in compliance, and we keep going down that road. And then we had this as a IAP as well. We finished it early on in the last fiscal year, but to have our regional Sand Hills Metropolitan Organization up and running, I think we have really made strides in this area. Scott Walston has helped us become a little more maybe professionalized and a little more on the ball when it comes to our MPO. So I feel like this is in a great spot, and as long as Scott doesn't want to retire a second time, we'll stay in a good spot. That's all our major IAPs. I ran through that pretty quick. Are there any questions or thoughts council wants to make on any of those projects?
I just had a couple minor ones. I was going through I'm working off the state of the village, which is what this was, right?
Yep, this is
Okay.
supposed to be the short summary of this, yes.
Okay, all right. I'll skip that one then. Skip that one. The one thing that I think would be good to include in the Given Memorial Library is the anticipated completion date. We mentioned it's the groundbreaking to take place, but I think it'd be good for, if folks are going to consult this, to know that.
And just to answer that now, it is 1 year after we sign the contract.
Okay.
I thought that was actually in there, but
It is, yeah. I don't think it's in this State of the Village. It's
No,
in
it's
the
not in this.
library contract.
okay.
I'm
that's right.
I'm reading this, yeah. Second, in the third fire facility item, it says here $400,000 for design, and then it says construction anticipated in FY '28. The design money of $400,000 is correct, but that's in our FY '29 look
Yeah.
down. So minor, but
Good
because-
catch. And honestly, it is,
Because when I saw it, I got confused, and I went back and looked at the 5-year fiscal. That was it. Okay.
we did have some other projects that, were kind of big deals this past year. I have them all listed out here. I don't think I need to go through all of them, but I just want to highlight a couple. First, the downtown parking, which really didn't get implemented until fiscal year '26, but it was something we worked on, and I think it is effective so far, and we will need a little more data, but so far, all signs indicate that it's a good project and it's having the intended consequence. One of the other things that has been great, more on the internal perspective that the council and the public is not going to see, but employee timekeeping was a big effort done by our finance and HR departments. So it saves me a lot of time every other week when I have to sign payroll, and it just brought us back into the 21st century. And then the mayor mentioned earlier today the number 6 sidewalks has been a really good project. Mike Gapke has definitely taken this kind of under his wing and is making sure that the project progresses well. And then last of all, not everything can be great. So we have Magnolia Chinkapin intersection project, which has had its hurdles, but it is moving forward and has made more progress in the last 6 weeks than the 6 months before that. Any questions on any of those projects? And while you think about that, Shannon, can you pull up the balanced scorecard PowerPoint? I have no comments on those projects, we can go through this, the village's balanced scorecard. Oh, while Shannon deals with some, okay, thank you. Overall, one thing that we decided this past year was to not do the resident survey annually. And so a lot of our performance metrics come from the annual survey. So there are a lot of gray blanked out boxes, and that's because those are all directly related to our annual survey. I do think that was the right choice. A lot of those metrics didn't change very much year to year, but it does make this report look a little less exciting than it might normally be. But as we go through this, there's a few areas that I wanted to highlight. Mostly I want to highlight areas that we have need for potential resources or improvement or focus on. One of those is our percent of emergency calls with a response of under 6.5 minutes. So you can see in fiscal year 24, it was 66%. It dropped in fiscal year 25 to 64%. This is why we are looking at the third fire station location. So this is a metric we need to keep our eye on and move forward with that project to address this item specifically.
But will the quick response unit make a difference there?
Yes, very much so. That's the intent. Is
okay.
That, if once we get those units up and running, that number should jump up,
right.
12-ish%.
I just had a couple of, I guess, minor comments on that. I went back to, so I got confused on the numbers a little. I went back to look at previous balanced scorecards. And in the KPIs, which these are, I believe, the that category of emergency calls with response times didn't show up until the FY25 item. So this was the first time. Previous to that, there was no mention of that emergency response in 6.5 minutes. There was a indication of the percentile that we finished in every year, but that is brand new. In looking at the fire calls responses, in FY22, we had a drop when we got to 23 of 121 calls. Then in 24, we went up 195 calls. And then in 25, we dropped just 5 calls. So we now have around the number of calls are falling within a particular period for 4 years of somewhere between 2,200 and 2,400. So the initial sort of spike that took place when the EMS kicked in, I think was has now had us settle into a pattern for 4 years. Because if you go back to FY21, there were 1,900 calls. And after that, it picked up 22 to 24. So I do think we need to give thought to the 6 minutes and 30 seconds as some standard. It's really a self-imposed standard. It's not a bad standard. But I couldn't find any requirement in the North Carolina statutes for a standard of that type of time in a response. And on the other hand, we currently have the best response time in Moore County. And you all reported in the last meeting or two that our neighbor, Southern Pines, was at 50%. So I just bring that out because these are numbers we're going to have to watch as we do make decisions. And one other thing that I stumbled on, not looking for it, but I Googled emergency response calls from Mecklenburg County, which has a huge population, that's Charlotte. And their response time for 911 calls, not fire, they're cardiac arrest or something else from a medical standpoint, was 10 minutes and 59 seconds. So I thought that comparison to us, granted, two different sized cities, but we're doing quite well. So I just want to point that out so we don't feel like that somehow we're shortchanging things or our citizens are under the gun, whereas I don't know of anyone who's hitting our times of this 6 minutes and 30 seconds anywhere. There's no one in the county, and I don't know where anyone else in North Carolina is, but I did find Mecklenburg EMS at 10 minutes and 59 seconds. So I just share that because it was the first time I actually saw that as a KPI itself.
Yep. So to that point, we track, something like 280 measures, and in the past, we reported to the council a number of them. As part of our retreat, we discussed, all right, we're going to provide council with a balanced scorecard. You don't need to see all 280, whatever they are. But also, the ones that we had on our balanced scorecard were very much, like I mentioned earlier, from the survey results, and there weren't a lot of hard quantitative data in it. And so we added a few back in January that were a little more quantitative and not just survey satisfaction questions. And so this is one of them that we added.
Right.
And the 64% is the best in the county. I have not searched the rest of North Carolina, but we are doing very well on that. Can we always improve it? Yes, and if the third fire station is the way we want to do that, we are working towards that. And in the short term, we're looking towards the quick response units to bring that number up quickly. So.
I think kudos for having number one, a hard quantitative number to aim for and then reporting against that number. I think that's so much better than percent satisfied with whatever. I really like the way you're going on that one.
Yeah.
I second that. Just a reminder again, when are we getting the next community survey results?
Yeah, so we didn't do it this year, so
Correct.
we will do it next spring, probably get the results May or June.
May or June next year? Okay, thanks.
And I think intending to make some fairly significant changes in the survey questions themselves.
Yeah, I had, drafted a reduced survey because fatigue is one of the things that we hear from people when they take it. But yeah, as we go through our retreat and work towards sending this out, we will have the opportunity to refine that and look at it a little closer.
I had a couple of,
Go ahead.
In Safeguard the Community, crime rate per 1,000 residents, we showed 20. And if I assume there are 18,000 people, that'd be 360 crimes. I wasn't sure what the definition of a crime was. That didn't seem to foot with the police report, but it could be different definitions.
Yeah,
Doesn't mean either one's wrong.
sure, you're right, it's how we define it. I'll ask Glenn to clarify exactly what that means.
In the same way under Goal 4, we had number of collisions per 1,000 residents at 36. If I multiply that by 18, I get 648. That is a lot higher than the reported collisions in the traffic circle. Now, obviously, this is village-wide. It struck me that that seemed to be much higher above the traffic circle than I would have guessed, which does not mean it's the wrong number. If those are taken from the police data, the police reports, then the number is what the number is. Good news is it's down, 10%, something like that from the year before. Same page under Goal 5, stormwater. We didn't do the survey this year. We had a couple of big storms. My suspicion is that when we survey, that number is going to go down. People are going to be less satisfied with stormwater, even though we have made, I think, a lot of progress and continue to make progress in what we're trying to do. But I think that should be a topic for our strategic retreat, thinking about what our goals are there. I've had a couple of individuals reach out to me, and in one case got Mike involved, with things that I would say is the design of the streets and what have you, and some cumulative filling in over the years of ditches in the right-of-way that were designed to move water in certain places that really aren't functioning that way. So
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you, John, but to that very point, the percent of MyVOP stormwater requests addressed on time did drop in quarter 4 of fiscal year '25, and I think that is related to all the rain we got in the spring. You know, we got even more in July. So,
and what do we, I'm not sure what we defined as on time, but clearly we got swamped by that big, we're never going to have enough resources to meet whatever the standard is in that circumstance, nor do I think should we. But
I think 30 days is for a stormwater request, but some of these need to be big projects that are obviously going to take longer than 30 days. So,
with Rassy Wicker, you mentioned obviously the turfing, and I know the day that we had the reopening, I was talking with the heads of one of the, I think it was lacrosse clubs, who had rescheduled from someplace because the field was unplayable. Are we deriving a meaningful amount of revenue from outside groups who are using that because it is in good condition all the time?
I mean, certainly we rent it out. I would have to, look at the numbers of exactly how much we're bringing in from that.
But I think that's yet another positive in addition to the savings that we are reaping.
Yeah, the analysis is a couple of years old, but when we looked at it, it saved money overall. There was a return on investment from both the rental and the savings from,
Right.
labor and water, fertilizer, et cetera.
And the last point that I would make, it is great to look at these things, and it's incomplete data because we didn't do the survey, but I would have been interested to see what are the areas where we had not performed particularly well in the past that we think we ought to, where the juice is worth the squeeze, and what sort of improvements did we make in those, as opposed to looking at the things that we're doing well and continue to do well, taking nothing away from that because it's very important.
Yeah, and the intent of this balanced scorecard is to look at it globally, and so we're not nitpicking things that are good. So this should show what we are also doing poorly on. One of the things I was going to bring up is the average police response time went the wrong direction this past year. This has a few issues. One, there were earlier in the fiscal year we had a few vacant police positions, but that's not all that different than any fiscal year that we've had in the past. We've also had some dispatch vacancies, and that may be more why this number looks off. When we were going back at the data, because it looked kind of funny, there were some times where a high priority call was like a 10-minute response time. It's like, there's no way it was an actual 10-minute response time. The dispatcher just didn't get in there because they were actually answering high priority other calls on the phone and weren't able to actually close out that call. So there's a little bit of reporting issue there as well.
The last thing I had, and this may be semantic, but on page 4, the third fire facility, it says, in parallel, the village will begin design work for a future Linden Road station. That's under the topic of establishing the quick response unit. Are we actually expecting to be spending any money this fiscal year or next fiscal year on that? Or are we waiting to see what the results from the QRU are?
Yeah, that's what we're doing. I forget when we actually had money budgeted for the design of the third fire station.
Why 29?
But if it was the 29, the mayor was
Yeah,
mentioning.
that was for the design
Thanks.
effort.
All right, so with that, I think we've covered the performance metrics pretty well. If there's no other questions, I'd say that is a pretty comprehensive look at both our metrics that show our ongoing day-to-day activities and how we're staying on top of those, and as well as the IAPs, our big projects that we've taken on in the past fiscal year. So if there are no other questions, we will let Dana come up and give the year review from the financial perspective. And you can have this one. It's not working from here, but it might work.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm here to report to you the unaudited fiscal year 25 financial results. The audit is, I would say, substantially complete in terms of the work of them checking the numbers. They just will be reviewing the draft of the financial statements, and our goal is to have it issued before the end of October, and then the auditors will come and present that to you either in November or December. So as of now, I'm not aware of any proposed changes by the auditors to these numbers, but just know that since the audit is still in progress, that is always a possibility. Overall, I would say we have ended fiscal year 25 in an excellent position. As Doug pointed out, it was definitely a year of progress and making some pretty significant strides in reaching our goals and accomplishing the initiatives that we had planned, some of them for several years in the budget, and we are actually making progress on them this year. Overall, our cash and investments, if we start here in the top left, you see this cash and investments increased almost $2 million. That's really driven by the overall increase in fund balance for all funds, as well as a pretty favorable yield percentage compared to what we had budgeted for. Our investment allocation is very similar to last year, where we're keeping 99% of it in the cash management trust.
Dana, can I ask a question on that one? And I ask these questions so that people who are listening and maybe haven't read the fine print that you provided to us will be able to understand some things. What's made the PNC bank account so different?
Primarily, it mostly is just because of the timing last year in where cash was sitting between the two accounts. You'll see last year we had 3% in PNC and 97% in the cash management trust. We do weekly transfers between the accounts to cover the operating cash needs for accounts payable and payroll. And I think it was just a matter of timing. It could have been in terms of when we had a payroll week versus not, or something to that effect. But we just happened to have more in the PNC account as of June 30th last year. It could have been a large deposit that came in, any number of things, but it was not anything intentional to keep more cash in there other than what we would have needed to pay bills.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep. And the yield percentage this year again is in line with the federal funds rate as of June 30th, which is what the cash management trust portfolio tracks. Moving on to the general fund balance sheet. For the general fund, cash did decrease about $500,000, overall assets decreased about $500,000. The majority of that was in the cash and investments balance. Cash in the general fund decreased mostly because of transferring $2.8 million to the library fund. The due from other agencies is primarily comprised of the receivables from the state for the local option sales tax, as well as the other taxes, local or state collected taxes, such as the electricity and other utilities. The increase there was about half of it was from the local option sales tax and the other half from the electricity sales taxes that were due compared to last year.
Do we know ahead of time what we are due, and how do we know that?
For all of the sales taxes, we do know what we're due, with the exception of 1 month's worth of local option sales tax. That's on a 3-month lag from the date the sale took place and you paid, the vendor, the sales tax on your purchase. 3 months later is when we would receive our share of that sales tax. So
who reports that to us? Doesn't that pass through the county?
It comes from the North Carolina Department of Revenue.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So we get a statement that says you will receive X?
Yes, so by the time, before we close the books in August, we already know what the payments that we received in July and August, which would have been for April and May's
Okay.
sales taxes collected. So June is an estimate, but that's the only amount out of that number that is still an estimate. The others are known based on the cash payments we receive in July and August.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Do see here a large increase in the accounts payable and accrued liabilities, about 800,000. That's primarily because of all of the wonderful construction work that we had going on through the course of June, or kind of leading up to the end of the fiscal year, between street resurfacing, the number 6 sidewalks, stormwater projects. Any work done through June 30th is recorded as an FY25 expenditure, but if we didn't pay those bills until July, they're in this accounts payable and accrued liabilities number. So it's just because of the significant amount of work that was being done leading up to the end of the fiscal year that number is higher. Overall, we have 22 million in fund balance in the general fund at the end of the year. That's favorable compared to what we were estimating in the FY26 SOP, but it does not take into account the almost $2.5 million of unspent funds from FY25, things that we had planned to complete this fiscal year that were reappropriated in August into FY26 using fund balance. So when you adjust this fund balance number for the $2.5 million reappropriated, it's more like 19 million compared to 18 million, I believe, that we projected as the ending fund balance in the SOP as an estimate. So we're pretty well aligned there, and certainly in a good position, looking forward to completing FY26 and planning the 5-year forecast going into the retreat and that whole strategic planning process that will be coming up starting in the fall. We're in a good position to start off from in terms of what we had planned in the forecast.
Dana, you had a note on the back that the unassigned fund balance increased due to higher expenditures in fiscal year 25. I'm not sure that I understand the relationship between those, why the balance went up even though expenditures were up.
Yes, so the unassigned fund balance, it has to do with our fund balance policy. And in the fund balance policy, the unassigned fund balance cannot go below 15% of actual expenditures. And so since actual expenditures went up, that 15% of actual expenditures went up. And the way our calculation worked out this year in terms of determining the fund balance committed for future capital, we were able to keep that unassigned fund balance at that 15% minimum.
And the expenditures that you multiply by 15% to calculate this floor includes or does not include capital expense? Is that operating expenses or all expenses?
All expenses.
Thank you.
So the denominator increased dramatically.
Yes. Yeah, not, we'll get over to the expenditures, but it looks like
I got one
yeah,
more question
that's
there.
okay.
The stabilization by state statute. Explain that a little.
Yes, so
Different.
the description doesn't really tell you anything about what we're stabilizing.
A perfect description.
The easiest way to understand what this number is there is a state statute that requires us basically to do this stabilization calculation. And what that number really represents is what amount of fund balance or money do we need to restrict or keep set aside to pay any contractual obligations that we have already as of June 30th. So that number is roughly the accounts payable and accrued liabilities, because we already know we have bills we need to pay to someone for those amounts. We have invoices, we have payroll, things that are due that we know we have to pay cash for. The other component is about $2 million in open encumbrances, so open purchase orders, contracts that for the construction projects and other things where we already know we have committed, we have a contractual agreement with someone saying, we will pay you for this. And so that's the other component of that. So the state statute basically requires that we kind of restrict or, set aside, earmark, whichever term you'd like to use, the amount of funds that we need to pay out those contractual obligations that existed as of June 30th.
Okay, so those are obligated funds.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
There are obligations that have not been invoiced to us yet,
Yep, just not paid.
but we're still aware of them.
Yes, yeah, not paid. They may have been invoiced, but not paid. Yep. The fund balance for future capital decreased slightly, so we effectively did use some of that funding. The funds used for capital projects this year, as well as the library transfer, kind of effectively drew down some of that fund balance committed for future capital that we had as of last year, so you would expect that to go down more significantly. But with the way these calculations work in determining the fund balance in each of these categories, really since the fund balance appropriated number in the assigned went down significantly, that kind of freed up some additional fund balance that that is now part of the committed for future capital. So there's kind of an order of operations to the calculations in which are determined first. And so since the fund balance that's appropriated in our FY26 budget, the $3.5 million, is significantly less than what was appropriated last year. That just allowed there to be more cash or more fund balance to commit as future capital to kind of offset what had been used on capital during the year.
When you go to the next category, other funds, at the top of the page, help me understand how the fund balance, that's an increase from June of last year to June of this year, or 2024 to 2025.
Yes. Yep.
So I'm trying to figure that out go ahead.
Yep. So for the library expansion capital project fund, during FY25, we transferred $2.8 million from the general fund to the library capital project fund. So you can see the total transfers went from $1.4 million as of last year to $4.2 million as of this year. So that added to the fund balance.
Thank you.
Yep. That really is sitting there as cash and investments, less the expenditures that have been made to date, which the about $250,000 increase in expenditures was as the design work was completed in FY25. Were there any other questions on the general fund balance before I move on?
So the fund balance number as of June 3rd, 22,183, has to hit the same number from the general fund balance sheet.
Yes, it does.
We're getting to the same number two different ways.
Yes. So this is in the balance sheet, it's just showing the total fund balance here.
Right.
And then below, it's breaking it out into the different restriction categories.
But if unassigned goes up, something else has to come down so that the total is the same. What goes down offsetting the reason why we have the increase in unassigned?
So the unassigned is really whatever is left over once you calculate all the other classifications. So once all the other categories are determined, then unassigned is what's left. The reason it's 15% is because as part of our committed for future capital calculation, we can't commit more in fund balance for future capital than we can't commit too much to where it would bring unassigned, what's left over below 15%. So that's where that floor comes in. There have been years in the past where there's extra unassigned fund balance where it's more than 15% of the expenditures, depending on how the calculation works out.
And so that $3.9 million is 15% of the total expenditures current year in the far right column of 26,461, which
Yes.
to my eye looks about right.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. All right. So then We talked about the library expansion capital project fund, the SMPO special revenue fund. Things are about double compared to last year. That's primarily because we had a first full year of operations of the SMPO this year compared to about a half a year in FY24. We do expect those expenditures to really ramp up in the coming fiscal year as the Metropolitan Transportation Plan and work with the consultant begins.
What's the capital assets? What's the 4 million we acquired?
Yep, 1.4 million was the Rossi Wicker turf field, about 340,000 for the athletic field lights in Cannon Park, 5 police vehicles totaled about 300,000, and that also includes construction in progress for the number 6 sidewalks. I believe that was about 300,000 as well, and some other stormwater projects and such. But those were the biggest chunk of the $4 million increase in the capital assets.
These are all this is the depreciated value though, right?
No, this is the gross value.
Oh.
Cost, yes.
Thank you.
The depreciated value is about 30, maybe I think about 33 million. So about half.
Next question that jumps out is compensated absences.
Yes.
Please enlighten us on that one. That's a big
Yes,
differential.
absolutely. So this significant increase, about 1.6 million, is because of the change in accounting standards. So a new accounting standard, GASB 101, became effective for fiscal year 25, and it changes the scope of what has to be included in compensated absences. So previously it was just vacation time. The accrued vacation time as of, the number of hours per our policy that people had as of June 30th, we multiply it times their wage rate and to come up with, what we potentially would have to pay out in the future for vacation time, because people do get their vacation time paid out if they meet certain criteria, but most people do when they leave.
Right. How was it changed that it
So
made such a
what
dramatic
it now also includes is a portion of sick time. Even though we do not pay out sick time when an employee leaves the village, the standard requires us to estimate the portion of sick time that will be used in the future before.
But we don't pay it out when they retire though.
Correct.
So why isn't it
Great question. Can you please ask the GASB that? Because it is part of the frustration for us as practitioners and the people that need to implement these standards, and it just doesn't make sense, right?
Well,
there's a lot of things
Because
don't make sense.
we will pay people for using sick time in the coming years during the course of their employment, but that is not increasing their pay beyond what we normally would pay them in their annual salary. So it does not make sense, but it is what's required.
I hear it makes sense.
yeah. Let me ask a question on that then. If a person retires, are they able to apply the accumulated sick leave towards their retirement date in computation?
Yes, so they are allowed to use unused sick time towards, as service credit, additional service credit for their retirement benefits, but that is non-cash. So they don't, there's a select few employees of the village left who are still kind of grandfathered in pre-1997, I believe it was, where they can get paid out a portion of the sick time that they had available at that point in time before things transitioned to service credits. But that is very, very minimal at this point.
Do I remember from a previous conversation there is a limit on that? That amount is not unlimited that they can claim?
Correct, it's 1/3 of, as far as those few people that are allowed to be paid out their sick time, yeah, they're limited to 1/3 of what they had at that point in time.
Just as a point of reference, I think FASB changed this a little over 20 years ago, where corporations had to explicitly carry the liability for post-retiree medical, and you had companies taking huge multi-billion-dollar non-cash charges when that became effective. So this sounds like GASB is, it's irrational to try to understand what the potential liability is, even if the calculation maybe doesn't exactly make sense.
Yeah, and in this case, with the sick time, it really does not reflect what may be the liability that we're on the hook for to pay in excess of people's normal annual salary. But, and just another note on this, it does not affect the way we budget. It does not affect, again, what we're paying people on a regular basis through payroll, or what we pay them out when they do leave the village. The policy is still the same. It is more just an accounting exercise, as you said, Mr. Taylor, to really try to estimate and quantify that potential exposure of what we may have to pay in the future. And within our budget, we do, at least for any employees that may potentially retire in the coming fiscal year, we do add salary and benefits budget for their potential vacation payout, at least for retirements. For normal turnover that we can't predict, we don't add anything in, but at least for employees that that potentially could retire during the year, we add something to the budget for that. But this does not affect, this does not mean we have an additional $1.6 million that we need to find in the general fund budget. It's just for kind of the overall financial statements where all these different liabilities are shown.
You?
All right, in terms of the property taxes, we did have about an 80 million, sorry, that's about it, yeah, increase in valuation during the year, and the real property valuation was about 50 million higher than what we had budgeted, and motor vehicles was about 30 million higher than what we had budgeted. We did adjust the real property budget at mid-year, so that came in about $5,000, $6,000 below what we had adjusted the budget to, so pretty much right on target with the real property. Motor vehicles really kind of helped to bolster those revenues, especially since we did decrease the tax rate. So you will see that the real property levy decreased from 2024, and that was because of reducing the tax rate by 1/2 cent. But motor vehicles kind of helped recoup some of that lost revenue from decreasing the tax rate. The motor vehicles is really difficult to predict what the valuation is going to be in any given year, and this year it just happened to be pretty substantially higher than what we had planned in the budget. Our collection rate is still very strong. It is a little lower than last year, but definitely still above the statewide average. All right, then moving on to the general fund budget to actual. We covered the ad valorem taxes. In general, in our SOPs and for the budget, when we're kind of planning fund balance for the future and the forecast, we do have an estimated budget to actual variance, and it's 1% for revenues, so we did exceed that from our revenue target for budget to actual variance. We had 3% higher revenues when we planned for 1%, and our budget to actual variance for operating expenditures is, in the FY25 budget was 9%, so you can see we 1% higher on that as well. So we were definitely exceeding and meeting those targets for our budget to actual variance. Some other big drivers of the revenues, the intergovernmental revenues is where we have the sales taxes as well as the PAL bill funds and any other grant funds. That was about 3% higher than budgeted. That was driven by the local option sales tax and electricity sales taxes. The electricity even more so than the local option sales tax. That was over $200,000 higher than what we had budgeted. In the other revenues, this category includes permits and fees, which those were, I believe, over $100,000 more than what we had budgeted, I think really driven by some of the significant development projects that are in the pipeline, Sandstone, and also some renovations at the Carolina Hotel. This also includes sales and services, which the harness track did very well this year. They had $92,000 higher revenue than what we had budgeted, as well as the Parks and Recreation programs and facility rentals, which includes the synthetic turf. And we can definitely get some more specific numbers on how much the field has been utilized and what we have earned from renting out the turf fields. But that definitely has translated into additional income for Parks and Recreation. And you can also see that our interest income was significantly higher than we budgeted. That primarily has to do with two factors. One, the interest rate kind of was very stable throughout the year, where we had been conservative and estimated that it would decline over the fiscal year. But I think even more so, the cash balance remained higher than what we had estimated in the budget. We were assuming some of these capital projects would progress a little quicker than they did, and so we did not spend as much of our cash and investment balance as we had estimated in the budget. And then we'll just highlight a few things on the expenditure side. Some of the significant changes, administration, you can see spent 10% less of its budget than last year. That was mostly from salary and benefit savings from holding 2 positions vacant, as well as from not printing and mailing newsletters in FY25. I know that has, I believe, since been reinstated, but it was planned in the budget but did not happen in FY25. In Public Services Administration, this also had to do with vacant positions, one for the stormwater technician that has not been hired yet, and the assistant director position was also vacant for several months. Powell Bill, we had done some extra paving work in FY24 leading up to the US Open, so now we just kind of went back to our normal scope of repaving during a fiscal year, and I believe the costs were also pretty favorable in the bid compared to what we had estimated. And then the other big one is planning, which the increase in expenditures compared to last year is really driven by the PDO update work starting, and the savings, the still low spending, only 78% of this year's budget, is really mostly driven by a vacancy in the planning supervisor position, as well as not spending the $100,000 for the multimodal plan that was budgeted.
Could you repeat that on the planning side, why it's 300 and some thousand less again?
400.
About 75,000 of it is from a vacant position,
Okay.
Salaries and benefits, that was open for the full year. And then 100,000 for the multimodal plan.
Okay.
That was budgeted, but we didn't use for that purpose. And then there was the full amount of the PDO funds were not spent. It was over 100,000 left that's being rolled forward to FY26 to finish that.
Thank you.
Yep. Go ahead.
I was going to, one number that I can't compute on is the net change in fund balance, that 188% number.
Oh, it's,
And then,
that's what last year's percent of budget was. Last year, we had an increase in fund balance of over 3 million compared to a budgeted, fund balance appropriation of 6 million or something like that. It looks crazy just because it was budgeted to be a negative number, and the actual result was a positive number.
I can't think of a follow-up question because I'm still trying to figure it out.
For this line, the percentages are not nearly as meaningful as just seeing the dollars. And we can get further into that when we get down to that line item. I'll just quickly go over the capital expenditures. You can see we spent about the same percentage. This number was quite a bit higher than the previous year, but we had some significant kind of one-time projects such as the turf and the field lights. But we also had over 2.2 million that was budgeted in the 6.5 that we did not spend, that we reappropriated into FY '26. So if we kind of account for those open purchase orders and kind of contracts that need to be completed for work, the 2.2 million, we add that, then we're about 98% spent. So we did have some actual savings from some of the projects and purchases this year compared to what we had budgeted.
Could some of that also be the library where we thought we might have spent some money in the last fiscal year? We didn't get there. That will all be in this year?
Not within the general fund. That would affect the cash balances and the overall,
Right.
the total fund balances for the village as a whole. And that $2.8 million transfer out of the general fund is what makes up the majority of this negative 2.5. There are a couple other items, subscription liabilities issued and sales of assets that offset that somewhat. So overall for the fiscal year, we used 1.3 million in general fund balance. The plan was that we would use fund balance this year. So we did achieve that. Again, it's mostly the projects that were not completed, 2.5 million in reappropriations that made this, less of a decrease than the 4.6 million that we had planned in the SOP. But overall, I think very well aligned with the way we plan our budget and the forecast. And you can see within the salaries, this is just a different way of looking at the total operating expenditures. It's the same totals as here above, but instead of being by department, this shows you salaries and benefits versus other operating, which is contracted services, professional services, supplies, et cetera. Very consistent in terms of the proportion of the budget that each of them makes up and the amount that we're spending. Any other questions on the budget to actual for the general fund before I go on to the last item? All right. Then I think just a quick update on Harness Track and Fair Barn. I think it's wonderful news that the Harness Track, this is the 43% of operating expenditures covered is a 7% increase from last year's results and higher than we had planned in the budget. And the Fair Barn covered 74% of their operating expenditures with revenues after discounts. That is 4% less, but we've talked through this a little bit before. The discounts are significantly higher in FY '25 because of the way rates were changed for I shouldn't say normal customers, but for clients who are not nonprofits. And so just created a larger gap between, and more of a discount effectively that the nonprofits are receiving. It does not reflect that we are renting the Fair Barn to nonprofits more often, significantly more than we did in the past. It's just the gap in the rates increased. That gap was closed somewhat in FY '26
Or changing the
rate schedules. Okay. Yes. The nonprofit rate was increased to help close that gap somewhat. But overall, very positive results for both of them. Any other questions?
No?
Very
Counsel?
comprehensive, as always.
That's great. There's a lot of numbers. Just off the top of your head, on a month-to-month basis, what ratio or number do you look at to make sure that we're kind of moving in the right direction or we're doing well? Is it operating ratio or what is it?
The two numbers that I really look at the end of the day are kind of total revenues. Are we on track in terms of where we should be at that point in the fiscal year? Okay. Knowing that not all of the revenues are earned, 1/12 at a time. But I look at overall revenues, are we on track? And same with the expenditures, operating versus non-operating, not operating versus capital, knowing capital will usually lag or be more
regular.
Two big
ones, right?
Yep. Are we on track to hit those numbers based on where we're at in the fiscal year?
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions, council? All right. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you.
Doesn't work over here, so you can give it to Shannon.
All right. We are now on item C, which is a discussion and approval of the library construction agreement with M Square Construction, Inc., with a base amount of $4.449 million. Doug, you want to lead this, or is someone else coming up?
I'll lead the discussion, but as you know, we received several bids. We had this low bid of $4.4 million. Then we had a group of other bids that were more in the 4.8 range, and then a couple that were over half or over the 5 million. We did have initially some concerns with this low bidder, but our architect did a very good job doing their due diligence, following up and asking a lot of questions. I recently had a conversation with the owner of M Square, and he's saying all the right things. He wants to do a good job, make this an excellent project for us, and hopefully that reflects well on him as well. So we are recommending that the council approve the contract and delegate authority to sign it to me. If there are any specific questions about the contract, please let me know. One that we already covered tonight is that it is a 365-day project, so next September we hope to be finalizing the project and getting Audrey moved in.
Okay. Go ahead, John, if you got something. I have something in a minute.
Couple of questions. Obviously, we have a new village attorney who might or might not have taken a look at our contracts. I don't know the extent to which these contracts are specifically drawn for the projects or are of a more general nature, but did they indicate any additional protections or remedies that we hope we will never have to use, but in case things go in a direction we hope they don't go?
Yeah, so it is a very standard AIA contract. It was reviewed by our new village council. He didn't recommend any changes. There are protections if they do not meet the stated deadline. So we feel comfortable that it meets our needs.
One of the things that I think people found frustrating with respect to one of our other projects was the number of days where there was no one there doing any work. Is there any part of the contract or discussion that we don't expect there to be 3 weeks in a row or whatever that nobody shows up?
That's not specifically specified in the contract. What would happen is our project manager, our architect is going to be managing this, would be on them. We're going to have weekly construction meetings and be like, why is nothing happening on this project?
And the last thing from me, I think Jack had expressed a question about what would happen if the bids came in above budget. Thankfully, they did not. But this is just the construction budget. This does not include furnishings, IT, etc. And if I recall, Oakley Collier had sort of a plug percent. Was that 30%?
So about 10% for FF&E, 10% for their fees, and then there was kind of spacing. I wrote it down, but there was another 10%, and I kind of forget what it was for.
So it is 30%. We should expect 30% on top of this
that.
for a total number.
Yes, that would be a good estimate.
So that'd be $1.4 million. That would still bring it in comfortably under the number that I think we had been targeting.
Yes, 6 million.
Good.
This does not include furnishings, though, is that correct?
Right, so we're setting aside 10% for furnishings.
That's FF&E.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is construction only. There's another 30% we should expect on top of this as a total project cost.
Probably, yep.
Okay. Excuse me. This is a big step for the Village of Pinehurst. The village is getting closer with this step to achieve something that they have been pursuing for probably over 50 years, which is to have a library, literally, of their own. And hopefully, and based on the village manager's comments, we have a high degree of certainty that we'll have a ribbon cutting ceremony for the new Given Memorial Library about a year from now. But what we have in front of us and what we'll see be executed is a roadmap that has taken some time to get to, but we've settled on a professional firm with a reasonable budget and a company with a good track record. And sometime in the months ahead, we can turn our attention to a new and improved Tufts Archives that will be finalized right there next to the Village Green. So we, as a council, helped bring this across the finish line. It took a bit of work, but I think the journey will be worth the destination here. So I congratulate my colleagues, and I think this is a big step for the Village of Pinehurst. That's all I have. Does someone want to make a motion?
I move to approve the contract with M Square Construction for the construction of the new library in the amount of $4,449,000 base bid, and authorize the village manager to execute the final contract.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, you have a contract. The village has a contract. Now we just need a library.
Would offer up one other comment. I was surprised in the detail that you provided there, how little competition there seemed to be among the subcontractors, how many of them were repeated across all the bids and what,
I think
Not
the
good or bad, I
electrician
was
was
just-
like
Yes.
all 8 of them, yeah.
I think there was one electrical contractor for all 8.
Yes.
I was just surprised at that.
All right, we will go on to item D. It's a discussion of the funding request for supporting the mutual agreement of benevolence with the town of Dornoch, Scotland. Not to be confused with some other Dornoch. Doug, I'll turn it over to you because we did discuss this at the last meeting.
Yeah, so we discussed it. At that time, you directed me to see if there was anyone able to potentially cover the cost of this dinner. I reached out to a few organizations. One has asked to remain anonymous, but they agreed to pay for half of the dinner. And then I reached out to another organization. Their president said they are likely going to fund it, but he wanted to bring it to the entire board to get it approved. So I'd rather kind of not go out and say what that is until we actually get firm confirmation from their board. But it looks like we are on progress to have the entire cost of the dinner covered by organizations and not the village.
Okay. Well, that's a terrific step. And remind, this is going to be November 21st through 24th or something?
22nd.
22nd, okay. And the dinner, which will be held, will be with people from both Dornoch and Pinehurst, along with some, according to this, a small number of local and regional golf leaders. Okay. Fellow council members, probably we'll just start with Dr. Morgan. You raised some legitimate issues last time. Do you have any comments or suggestions?
Yeah, I got a couple. I'm aware of the anonymous donor, and my understanding from that, Doug, is that that is totally different from us and will not in any way be a quid pro quo or any sort of
So yeah,
things.
it's just a straight donation to the village.
Okay. And certainly, as what I've heard from that, I'm comfortable, and I will certainly maintain the request for anonymity on that. But I'm comfortable with that. That is legit as we're moving forward. I'd like to find out a little bit more of the other organization and ensure that there's no conflicts that may occur. And as that goes forward, I guess we can look at that because you're not asking for a decision right now on this. But certainly we'll do it. The third thing I'd like to just state, and I don't really care who is donating here, well, thank you to the donors, first of all, on that, and be willing to do that. I still feel that the council members should pay their own way, and as well as covering any, if they have a spouse going with that. And I assure you that I will be paying my own way to whatever that comes out to be. So right now, if we have a $3,000 donation, that leaves $3,000 left. My quick math, I guess, defer to John, but it comes out to about $75 a head, I think. And so That's what we're looking at. And if there's anybody that's coming from our staff in there, then I have no problem in making sure that we're covering that also. Okay, and I'll be willing to do that. So I do not feel that we should be going there under someone else's dime on this. Then the final question I have on here is that on whose authority is former Mayor John Strickland coordinating this?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, you know, maybe last November, the Donald Ross birthday was coming up, the celebration, and we hadn't done anything the year before. John approached us about doing something about that, and at the time, he organized that call and helped make that happen. And from there, I don't know if it was necessarily a conscious decision, but he sort of took on the role as the ambassador to Dornoch in implementing what was kind of his vision when he was the mayor. It was one of his pet projects that he made happen before he left.
Yeah, I certainly recognize the time he was mayor doing that, and I appreciate his passion. I don't question the idea of having a sister city, and I appreciate the passion. Mayor, did you authorize former Mayor Strickland to represent our community on this?
I don't know if I can officially recall whether I authorized it, but if I didn't, I will do it ex post facto. I have no problem with him. Someone had to do the legwork between here and Scotland, and so he seemed, one, he had an interest and certainly has an appropriate background. And so, and to revisit the money issue, I'm fine with your suggestion of council members paying their own way for the dinner. But I think we should be, members of the staff who will be attending, I don't think they should be paying for their own dinner. I will want to see the village pick that up if necessary.
Okay. I'm going to go back to just the authorization on here to represent the village on here. Typically, whenever you have someone who's coordinating activities, we vote on that. And this is kind of taking a life of its own. And again, I appreciate the efforts here, and I want to make sure that we have a good sister city arrangement. But I read the benevolence agreement, and there's nothing in there about exchange. There's nothing in there about dinners that are on there. It's a more of a sister city. Not that I want to not have it, but we're not following the proper process here. If somebody's going to represent the village, from what I've seen in the past and what my feelings are, is it needs to be approved by the village council. So that we missed that one on this. So
I think I would come at this from a slightly different perspective, but I might end up in the same place. In retrospect, someone on the council at the time that John's term, former Mayor Strickland's term was up, probably should have taken official responsibility for
totally
that.
agree.
We can say that we dropped the ball on that. We can pick that ball up and patch that up. So I think we end up in the same place. I guess and I agree, out of an abundance of caution, with no belief that any organization who might want to fund some portion of this has any conflict, it's probably a good idea that we pay our own way, which I'm happy to do. And agree that any staff members in attendance, their costs should be covered. So I agree with that.
Other comments? Okay. All right. You have a green light, Doug, to continue working on this, and I guess more details will emerge as far as a schedule and who wants to go and who can go and who's not able to go and so forth.
Yep.
Okay. All right. All right. Now we have, brings us to item 7, which is other business. Other business. Anybody on the council who wants to raise some other business?
At some point in time, I think that we need to have a discussion and a selection of someone who's on the council to take up the ball with Dornoch on there, and also not just for this council. Many of the decisions we're making are for future councils, but I think
Sure.
that needs to be assigned duty.
Sure.
Fair enough. I would second that. Maybe a lead person relative to our arrangements with Dornoch would be appropriate at some point in time.
Correct. This got out of control, and it's all recoverable. Okay, but our job is governance. Let's have governance.
Anything else, John? No?
I think I'm good.
Okay, then, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the regular meeting.
Second.
So be it. Let us take a